Welcome to the Merrily End. My name's Mark Machado. I'm joined by my cousin across the pond. I'm in London today. Joined by my cousin across the pond, Dominic Machado, the professor of cricketology. We are the Merrily End. If you don't know about us already, we talk about Sri Lankan cricket. There's obviously a lot going on in Sri Lankan cricket. We're midway through our, I was going to say, our final Test series of the year. We've got we drew the first one against Bangladesh. If you didn't know about that result, and the second one, which isn't at Gaul, to the relief of a number of people who've been watching the last test, it is in Colombo. Starts on Wednesday. Leave us your comments, leave us your thoughts, leave us your questions. We'll try and get to them. Also, hit that follow bar, hit the like button, tell all your friends about Merrily, and the more people who kind of come on board and join the conversation, the more content it allows us to produce, and the kind of bigger it can grow. Don't worry, none of us are making huge amounts of money off it. It's still basically a labor of love. But we've got big plans, so get on board with it, and let's see where it goes. Dom, it's been a couple of days now since we last spoke, since Angelo's last test, and he's written off into the white ball sunset,
White ball
or,
sunset.
or the red ball sunset, the red ball highway, which leads to the white ball paradise. There's a new test squad come out, or not new. There's been a slight rejig in the test squad. Vishwa is in, as is Dunith Walalage. There's 11 places up for grabs, but there seems to be 19 names on this list, which kind of I understand because it doesn't cost them money to. They don't need to get flights to people or house people or feed people. They're just kind of there anyway, playing cricket, all
Yeah.
on central contract. Um, how do you think, or what do you? Would you like to make any predictions about what the 11 might be?
Mark, I'm going to follow your policy and say trying to predict what SLC is going to do is really just a fool's errand. And really, we should just react to what they're doing rather than try to predict it. That being said, the match is being played at the SSC, and pictures from the SSC show that there's a fair amount of grass on the pitch, which is leading to some speculation that three seamers might be played, which makes sense that Vishwa Fernando is in the squad, but it doesn't explain why Dunith Walalage, who notionally wasn't around, who was around for the previous match, is now in the squad. And that's led to all sorts of speculation. Does that mean Prabhat is going to be dropped? Does that mean Tharinder Ratnayaka is going to be dropped? It's hard to tell because Bangladesh has a very left-hand heavy lineup, so dropping the off spinner would be a very, very questionable tactical decision. Prabhat has been your top wicket taker over the last few years, so dropping him would also be problematic. Even as much as we want to say he should do better, there's no guarantee that Dunith Walalage is just going to come in and immediately rip through sides. I believe he played 3 years ago in a test against Australia, and he was fine, but it wasn't like, okay, this guy's a guy who we must have in the lineup. Hard to know what exactly is going to happen. We need to find two replacements. Milan Ratnayaka is injured, right? And Angelo is out of the side. So those are two that we know are going to change. And then beyond that, it's all up for grabs.
In a way, though, those are kind of the hardest two to replace, because I know Angelo doesn't bowl many overs, but on some level he is the seam option on some level. And then Milan, actually, no one knew this before his debut, but he's actually an all-rounder, or effectively he plays as an all-rounder for our side, regardless of what you think of his ability to bat. He can stick about a bit, and he did um, in the first test. I'm not, which I think means that Danusha should get a shot, right?
Right. And this is the strange thing, right? Danusha has sort of always been ahead of Walalage in the pecking order for that all-round slow left armor role, where in A tours, in youth tours, he's emerging tours, he's been the guy that's been included in the 4-day squad ahead of Wella. And so it would be kind of strange to just see and frustrating for someone like Sonal Danusha, who's had very good performances, who's done everything he needs to be in the side, to be kind of pushed aside at the last moment and told, hey, this isn't going to work. And unless the pitch is different and unless the changes are forced, I wonder what the mentality or the thought process is behind chopping and changing so much when, as you said, Mark, this is the last test of the year. This is not a change that we're making anticipating a series in a month or anticipating a series in 2 months. This is the last test cricket we're going to play for 12 months. So I don't know if SLC is thinking of it as a free hit in that case, but there are also crucial World Test Championship points at stake here.
I would say that if we don't get a result, let's go to Dennis' comments. Prabhath maybe dropped. He's been out of form in domestic international over the past 6 months. Think of it as a break. So again, I'm going to caveat this with my kind of disclaimer that I always have to roll out whenever I talk about what may or may not happen around. I say selection, but actually anything to do with Sri Lankan cricket, because SLC are a very difficult body to predict what they might do next. So my kind of thinking is Weller has been brought in because I think they are going to drop Prabha. And I think that you can kind of justify bringing him in because he will bowl overs if you need him to bowl. Between Weller and DDS and Kamindu, they would be saying that's as many wickets as Prabha has been getting the last few games, because the way that you should look at it is how many overs is he bowling, how many wickets is he getting, how do we replace that, right? So it's not it shouldn't be a like for like. It should be
it's a lot of overs though.
Yeah. So and I think they're kind of thinking that we might need to bat a bit longer, or bat more, bat in a different way. I don't want to say bat a bit longer, bat in a different way. Angelo was a bit of a break, right? As in, he could drop anchor if need be. So whoever comes into to his role as a batter is obviously going to be less experienced. Well, I think they'll be thinking Weller can, if he wants to, just stick about. Not if he wants to.
So
if he needs to.
So Mark, what's the 11 you're imagining?
Dom, I don't even want to get into that, right? Because I still can't figure out for the life of me whether, because essentially, traditionally, or not traditionally, a more traditional selectors would go seamers with one spinner, right? Well, I still think they're gonna play two somehow.
So this brings us to what Savina is saying, where SSC is not a spin friendly ground, right? Which we talked about, and why not go with 3 seamers and Tharinder Ratnayaka as the spin option? If someone gets injured, that's the big issue, right? If someone gets hurt, then you're going to be relying on DDS and Kamindu to bowl a lot of overs. Part of me wonders whether Wella is to bat at 8 like a Milan Ratnayaka type, where he's the second spin option, and you play maybe where you play Wella and Tharindu, so you got your slow left arm and your off spin, and then you play maybe either Kasan Rajatha or Vishwa Fernando as your second seamer. I think it would be hard to play 3 seamers plus Wella unless you're dropping both Tharinder Ratnayaka and Prabhath, which would seem to be kind of a crazy decision to make. The other possibility is that they just move everyone up one spot in the batting order and play Wella at 7. So they have the openers, which would be Patham and Lahiru. They would have Chundi at 3, Kamindu at 4. You'd have DDS at 5, Kusal at 6, or maybe keep Kusal at 7 and put Dunith at 6. So if you want to extend the bowling a bit, that could be one way to do it, but that would be pretty harsh on someone like Pasindu Surya Bandara, who's been waiting in the wings, who's got a first-class average of 57, and probably was thinking, okay, Angelo is out of the squad. There's a middle order spot open. It's mine now. And now, and again, looking at that squad, that's what you're kind of thinking and imagining. But now that's all up there.
I'll be honest. I mean, people have been saying for a few weeks to us on these chats, bring Weller in, bring Weller in, bring Weller in. And I just thought it's a good idea, but I didn't think it was going to happen. I didn't think that he was in the plans for this.
What does that tell you, Mark? What does that tell you about?
I just can't predict. I generally cannot predict what's going to happen. I thought.
Do you think there's too much of a correlation between chatter, bring well in, bring well in, bring well in, and boom, pop, he appears? And it's not the first time in the last couple of years where the bring someone in chant that's gone on and on.
So like. There's kind of I've got two thoughts about that, which is, firstly, I think the people who are watching it closely, right, which I'd include me and you in that, right? Yeah. Our ideas aren't necessarily kind of bad ideas, right? So, like bring and bringing Walalage in is a great example of that, because he with ball in hand, bowling, he offers something else, something a bit different, and with the bat, he's proven at international level he can bat at this level. So I don't think it's all in all an entirely bad idea. My kind of worry, or the kind of concern is it effectively mob rule, right? Is the social media chatter becoming so loud that they feel that they've got to do it? I don't feel in this instance that's the case. I feel like that has happened in the past. I feel like some players have become either irresistible to selectors or kind of undroppable, regardless of kind of what level of fitness they're at, or what their kind of recent record at international level has or even domestic level has been, but they've ended up in squads. Yeah. I also kind of think, though, when it gets down to the 11, that's when you actually see what's what. For me, it's surprising me with the amount of cricket that Weller and even Vishwa play, that they would select them at this point, bring them in so late into the test series, and then not play them. But the thing is, though, Dom, is me and you've had this conversation umpteen times in the last few years.
Yeah, like Akila Dhananjaya, right? We said this at the beginning of this series. Why would you bring in Akila Dhananjaya unless you were planning to play him?
Because especially in a home series, right?
In a home series.
If you want to have a look at him, just bring him down to bowl in the nets. You don't need to put him into the squad unless you know he's going to play in the squad.
So what is the logic, right? So that's I think what we got to think about. And one of the critiques we've made against the Sanath regime is, what is the long-term plan?
Yeah.
Because these short-term fixes, they sound great, bring in Wella, but that's not a guarantee that Wella's just going to come in and mint wickets from day one.
Yeah.
So for me, it reveals you already have an 18-person squad. You drafted an 18-person squad. That's more than enough players to cover 2 tests.
Unless they feel that they've got this bigger squad, and sorry, not this big squad. Unless they feel that actually there's no test cricket for 8 months, 9 months.
Yeah.
And it's just get an 11 that could win this game. That's all they need to do, because they just need the points. And then next time around, kind of work out what those spots are, which is a really odd way of looking at it, because the World Test Championship is meant to be giving us something to aim at this point. It's not meant to be kind of see what works.
and it's a clear
trial.
2-year cycle. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
a very nicely demarcated squad, and one of the strengths of Sri Lanka's red ball cricket has been its stability. We've been playing the same guys over and over and over again, and not chopping and changing.
Yeah.
You look at someone like Damuth Karunaratne, he developed so much precisely because we gave him chance after chance. We believed that he had the talent to become a world-class opener, and he did. And not everything is going to pay off, but if you believe that Prabhat in match 1 is going to spin you to victory, and then by match 2 you say, sorry, that's not going to work, what does that tell you about the long-term planning?
It's absolutely wild, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely wild. I just think it's one of those things we've just got to wait and see what happens, because yet again, I mean, maybe it's me and I can't see the 4D chess that's being played, because I'm not even a chess guy. I'm playing checkers at this point, right? So I don't see what they're trying to do. And look, I think Vish was a great cricketer. I think Walalage, I've been a fan of his since he kind of arrived.
Since he was born, right?
Yeah, since he was born. Well, and I know a lot of people at SLC kind of really rate him, right? They really rate him, and there's big hopes and expectations for him. It's in cricket, unlike any other sport, because it's such a mentality play, and it's all about a player's psychology. It's not just good enough to have the skills. At the top level, they have to have the right mindset. And I think the belief in SLC is that he's got the right mindset. I mean, he's 21, 22, and we've already seen he's already won us games.
He's in it, right? That I think is the big bit. He's competitive, he's fierce, obviously got a great skill set, but he has that will to win that everyone wants in a player. I just want to bring up a point that Savina makes here. Last time Bangladesh toured Sri Lanka for a 2-test series, it was Embuldenia and the seam bowlers who took most of the wickets. So I also want to add to this that when they went to Bangladesh, it was also the seam bowlers, I think Kasan Rajatha and Asata Fernando, who really troubled Bangladesh. So there is something to be said about, okay, let's prepare a grassy wicket and see who can handle it, right? And also bearing in mind that our batters should be much more prepared for dealing with seaming wickets, given that in the last year they've played in England 3 test matches and they've played in South Africa a couple test matches, which makes you again ask the question, in terms of long-term planning, you have the evidence from the last Bangladesh series, you know that our players are probably better players of pace than theirs. Why not prepare a seamer-friendly wicket?
Let's give it a go. Let's see what happens.
See how it goes, right? Yeah. Nothing to lose.
How are you feeling about Laharu Udaru's place? Because the time you're most likely to lose your spot in this side is within your first 2 or 3 tests.
Yes. He looked so good in that first innings. I think it would be pretty harsh to drop him. That being said, maybe they said, Laru, we're going to give you 1 match and Oshada will give you the second match. Maybe they've already made that decision, but it would be really, really harsh.
It would be harsh, but again, I go back to I can't foresee what SLC might do, especially in red ball cricket. In white ball cricket, I think it's slightly more predictable, because I think because the players are playing more white ball cricket, where I think we're a bit more familiar about what they can do. Dennis said our players are better than theirs on both spin and seam wickets. We just can't force a result on some flat pitch. I think that's true. I do think that Gaul pitch, Bangladesh looked more likely to get 20 wickets than we did.
Right. That is true. That being said, 1,000 runs from the first 2 innings kind of does tell you a lot. And both sides could have had more. It's one of those things where if you look at it, That was kind of the floor of how many runs each of those teams could score. So I think, to sum up what we're saying is that tune in, go, or if you're in Colombo, go, because it's free entry to the SSC.
What
Turn
an
up,
amazing place to get free entry to. What are the
right?
great places to watch Test cricket, and it's free. Imagine paying, like last year, Sri Lanka fans being coming to England or in England were having to pay over 100 quid to go to Lords. This is free. That's amazing. Get down there, enjoy it. Dom, should we talk about a few of the other stories around Sri Lankan cricket at the moment? Because there's a lot going on. Of course, after the Test series, we've got the ODI series, which I'm looking forward to, and then a T20 series as well. So it's kind of all go with Sri Lanka at the moment. I'm trying to think of the other topics I said that we would discuss.
Emerging team.
Emerging team. Yeah, the emerging team have been down in the West Indies. I think you were keeping a close eye on this, right?
Yes. So as our frequent listeners will know, the 4-day series was split 1-1, Sri Lanka taking the first match and West Indies taking the second match. We started the 1-day series. I believe there are 3 one-day games. The first match, West Indies was bowled all out for 237 with Trevin Matthew, right? Noted, very skilled bowler, taking 3 for 40, and Garuka Sanketh, another slinger, right arm slinger, also taking 3 for 45. So 2 players who are highly rated within the system, who the IPL has been sniffing around. Both of them, I believe, Trevin was called in for a couple trials. Garuka played as a net bowler, right? And so they bowled out West Indies for 237. And then in reply, Sri Lanka got 238 for 5 in 39.4 overs. Nipun Dhananjaya, who had a pretty quiet series, scored an 88 from 125. But the big innings came from Ahan Wickramasinghe, again, who had a pretty quiet series prior to this point. He scored 103 from 79 balls. Striking at 130. Really, really good to see those 2 players from whom we expect a lot putting up big runs and scoring at that kind of clip. It's really good to see that intent, a word we always throw around from the youngsters.
Of emerging teams, how many do you think are ready to pop into in and around the full senior side?
Good question. So part of it has to do with how much space there is. So someone like Trevin Matthew would be a good candidate for the Sri Lanka white ball squads, I think. But he's very similar to Mahesh Theekshana. And Theekshana at this point is quite a far bit ahead of him because of his experience. So the hope with someone like Trevin is that he gets exposure from maybe a CPL team is watching some of these games and he'll get drafted into a squad and things like that. I think Ahan Wickramasinghe and Nipun Dhananjaya are kind of at that sort of level of next group of batters that are in line. Again, the procession for that is it's hard to get into this squad, but if Ahan Wickramasinghe continues, he scored that 103 at number 5. That's a person who we could definitely have in the squad, bolstering that middle order for Sri Lanka, because we've talked about that 4 and 6 position being kind of iffy in the 1-day squads. And I think we've talked about Ravindu Rasantha as well. Nick's former student who has scored big runs, hit big sixes. Hopefully he'll get some time in and around the squad, potentially red ball, white ball. We don't know at the moment, but those are some of the guys that I'm looking at. And hopefully all these guys get exposure from this tournament, and then they get drafted into some teams that play around the world that can allow them to grow and develop their games in ways that we want to see as Sri Lankan cricket fans.
I would love to see SLC have some sort of reciprocal arrangement with a few of the other Test nations. Someone like the West Indies would be a great place to start, where you go, why don't you take 5 of our best youngsters, force and distribute them across your CPL sides, and we'll take 5 of your best youngsters and bring them into the LPL. for a season. See how that goes. Just do a kind of a transfer, a kind of forced transfer. Something like that. Someone like, Trevine Matthews, someone who's been around a couple of years now. It's interesting what you said about his path potentially being blocked because there's players who aren't that much older than him, who are kind of slightly more well developed, essentially, effectively because they're slightly older than him and just got the opportunity slightly earlier and have kind of seized it. Right? How do we create that competition? How do we get to a place where he's breathing down other players' necks in terms of trying to knock that door down? We're on this show. We've been massive advocates of get the players out playing as much T20 cricket all around the world. Use those franchise leagues to our advantage. They can go away, learn how different places operate with new coaches, learn new techniques, learn with different players, sit around the different cultures, and really learn how to become professional cricketers. That's where, when you talk about that mentality, that's where they're gonna grow into being top level, right? And interestingly, I feel when we saw that kind of prime England team, when it went from 2015 to 2019, there were a lot of those players in the 2019 squad that won World Cups with them actually ended up playing a lot of franchise cricket before that, right? And going around and seeing at that point how Sri Lankans and Indians and other people were doing it. And we need to kind of go away and do that learning a little bit as well with some of our players. We look at what, one of the players who's most benefited from that has been Matisha Patarana. Right.
I was going to say this is a perfect segue.
Yeah. And he's a kind of a legend in Chennai. Who knew that a Sri Lankan guy from Kandy could become a legend in Chennai? Who wasn't named Murali. And this week we saw him, or yesterday, in the last 24 hours at some point, being on a Zoom call with Malinga, the person whose bowling style he tries to emulate every time he picks a ball up, right? Which is, one of those things that's absolutely great to see, because you love to see that transfer of knowledge come down the chain, right?
Yeah, it's brilliant to see. And I think what was so much appreciated, it sounded like there was a lot of appreciation from Matisha's point of view for Lasith Malinga, right? Because this is kind of a hard time in his career where he's sort of been sussed out. He's not performing as well as he once did. And having Malinga there, the person who probably understands what he's going through more than anyone else, is such a huge plus. And seeing that mentoring, and it seems like Mully has always been that guy, right? He's always, everyone talks about how willing Malinga is to give advice, and how much he actually cares about our cricketers and is willing to help them and inform them. And it's kind of a shame he's not around the side more, because it seems like he does want to be around the side and does want to help more. I understand he's not quite a fixture in or much liked around SLC because he sounds the beat of his own drum. Don't worry, Jania, we'll get to your question in a minute.
Yeah, but you're right about Malinga not being everyone's favorite. The thing is, right, his videos that he does on his YouTube channel, I forgot what it's called. If you search Malinga, you'll find it. Malinga 99. Yeah, Malinga 99. They're absolutely incredible. When there's a big match on, not a schools fixture, an actual big game in the World Cup, and he does a video the night before talking about how he'd bowl to the opposition batters and what he would do. And you're just like, this is brilliant. And you can see he's basically auditioned for a coaching job at that point, right? It's interesting to me. He can find the spot in the IPL as a coach, and obviously he's a legend for the Mumbai Indians. But that he's not getting much luck finding coaching gigs in SL. But I'm sure eventually that might come. Do you remember that series against Australia during COVID? When everything was falling apart politically and economically in Sri Lanka. And he was the bowling coach, and when Shanaka was going absolutely nuts, there's that picture of him just sitting there I think he's on the balcony basically by himself,
Yeah.
going crazy. I love that. I love that scene. I watch those highlights once or twice a week just to
Oh
get
yeah,
me
you
going
have
in the
to,
morning.
right?
Yeah, exactly. Shall we talk a little bit about the Women's World Cup because it's 100 days?
Yes.
100 days about it. There's a couple of questions coming about the test side. We'll get back to that once we've gone through our little rest, the other topics that we need to talk about, the rest of the topics. 100 days to the Women's World Cup. Dom, I haven't told you this, but I'm so buzzed up about the Charmy Army.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what the Charmy Army is, it's the 40,000 screaming Sri Lanka fans at SSC when Sri Lanka take on Australia in the beginning of October. Because if you haven't heard the news, this World Cup, this Women's World Cup, is going to be split between India and Sri Lanka. It's a kind of last minute decision. Cricket's the only sport in the world which have a last minute co-host, and Sri Lanka's the only country in the world that would become a last minute co-host of a World Cup. Sri Lanka stepped in to spare the blushes of the ICC and the BCCI to essentially host Pakistan, but part of the deal is that they're going to play a lot of the Sri Lanka games there. Yeah. I'm thinking, Dom, I'm going to be there. I want to be part of it. I want to get to at least one of those games.
You're gonna lead the Charmy Army, the Charmy Army.
Charmy Army in Colombo, screaming at the Aussies. I'm trying to aim for that weekend if I can get myself to Colombo. Then I think I've got enough Avios points to do it. Trying to get there, and I'm thinking if we do it, then we should have some sort of meet up on the Friday night. I think I need to check this, but I think that game's on Saturday. I think India playing Pakistan in Colombo on a Sunday, which obviously I'm going to make it all the way to Colombo for that game on Saturday. I've got to try and get myself to India, Pakistan as well. That'd be electric. And then I've got to get. I reckon we should do some sort of Murali and Charmy Army meetup on the Friday night. If anyone's got any ideas about where it could be, how we do it,
yeah, show Mark a good time in Colombo.
Yeah, we can call me up a Gall face wearing our Charmy Army t-shirts. I don't like, or we can go meet up in Uncle's bar or something like that, right? Let's go and do it. If you're into it, if you're interested in it, leave a note, leave a message, comment, get us up on Twitter, on YouTube, on Instagram, whatever.
And Day One Cricket asks, do women's games get big turnout in Sri Lanka? Love to see it. Well, the thing we know is that the Asia Cup, when the women were playing well, every game was packed to the brim. The atmosphere was so exciting. In that final, you could see the trees packed with fans, all hoping to get a look at Chamri and the women's team as they took down India. Crowds weren't as fantastic for the latest tri-series between South Africa and India and Sri Lanka, but I'd imagine for a World Cup with people willing to travel that it's going to be amazing. Okay, here's some positive vibes we got to put on here. Mark, I'll let you take this one.
Our women's team was really like the 1996 men's team. Look, I've been saying this for a little while. I think there's real parallels between the two things and what's going on in terms of like that kind of moment for where the cricket teams are, right? In 1995 and 96, going into that World Cup, it was a bit of Sri Lanka was still a kind of emerging side. People really weren't taking them seriously. It's weird now to think about it because Sri Lanka is a much more established side, right? But at the time going into that World Cup, Sri Lanka wasn't a serious time. Weren't considered a serious team. They obviously are very much now. Again, it was a moment where there was a lot of political strife. This in 1996, it was in Sri Lanka. This time the strife is a little bit further up north in the region, and thankfully Sri Lanka has nothing to do with it. Obviously, we don't want to see any strife anywhere. And games are being moved and talked about being moved last minute and stuff like that. There's lots of parallels. There's that Sri Lanka side of 1996 had kind of 3 or 4 superstars who were kind of trying to crack through. And I feel like obviously the women's side is Chamri, who's an out-and-out superstar. But I think underneath that, there's 3 or 4 players there who could really dominate international cricket for the next kind of decade or so, if not longer. So yeah, I think there's real parallels there as well. And I really think, we mentioned this last week as well, Dominic, when the fixtures list came out. if Colombo can get behind that team, if the women's team can get some head of steam up. We know that their first 2 games against India and England are going to be played in India, and that's going to be tough for them. We know those are going to be 2 tough games, but all the rest of the other games of the round robin are going to be played in Colombo. If we can get big crowds there, if we can get going, we know we can get ourselves through to the next stage. I have full faith. Generally in life, if it comes between trusting the women to do something or the men to do something, always back the women. They'll always find a way. Particularly true of Sri Lankan women as well.
Very true.
So I think that this is like 1996, a golden opportunity has landed into our laps, and it just feels like everything is coming together at the right moment. I'm going to keep talking this up. I want to be there. I just said to
somewhere Estelle is saying, Mark, cool it.
Shut up. Shut that guy up. Shut that guy up.
Don't disconnect him on them. I think it's going to be fascinating. I think you never know what can happen. When you play cricket, you never know what can happen. I wouldn't have imagined that Sri Lanka would have been in the final of a tri-series between India and South Africa, and they were. There's a lot of talent there. I think they're not going to be as burnt out as they were in the previous World Cup, in the 2024 World Cup, where they played so much cricket. They had to qualify. They had to play an Asia Cup. They had to play extra series. All those kind of things. I think they're fresh. And the biggest thing about the 96 team is having that attitude, having that role clarity, and having that sheer belief that what we've constructed here while people weren't looking is good enough to do the job.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think now, apart from Australia, I think we've beaten everyone.
Yeah.
I think no one, the women's team shouldn't fear anyone.
No.
At all.
Away and at home.
Away and at home, yeah. They can do this. They got this. Should we talk about this 18 tour in Australia? The reason I'm bringing this up, Dom, isn't because I'm going to be staying up all night to watch it. I'm going to put that out there. It's because I saw something on Facebook earlier. Zendon J, I think that's how I pronounce his surname, has been selected for the Australia squad. He's a Aussie Lankan from Queensland. He hasn't played a single game in the Sheffield Shield, but I looked into his background and his history. It's quite interesting actually, because his father was a cricketer who played, obviously, who left Sri Lanka at a young age, but he played a lot of cricket in Australia. He played for Oxford University. He got 2 blues for them, and then he played a lot of cricket for the MCC. He's played a lot of cricket around the world. And now his son is a left-arm spinner. They're from Brisbane, and his son's got the unenviable task of having to play against his father's homeland. I think this is something that's going to happen quite a bit in the future. We've seen it a few times, obviously. There's been a few Sri Lankan Aussies, Ashton Agar most recently, who've ended up playing against Sri Lanka. I think this is something that's going to become a bit more prominent in the years going forwards. Obviously, when we play associate teams, it happens quite a bit. I just wonder, how we're going to do on Murali, we're going to explore this story in particular a little bit more in the coming days and weeks. So do definitely, I think he might be an interesting player to keep an eye on, because he's already broken quite a few domestic records, and I think he's only 21 still, so he's still got a
lot of talent.
Yeah. Are you generally excited about this tour, Tom, or not really giving it too much thought?
Well, we haven't seen the Sri Lankan squad for it. So for me, that's the interesting part, is I do want to see who they send. I do want to see what the overlap is between the A team and the national team and this emerging squad, right? That's something that we're going to have to contend with. Is it's great that we have these tours and that we're giving players these kind of opportunities, but what's the overlap in terms of that? And then I think the series ends the 23rd or the 24th, which notionally the LPL is supposed to be starting right after that. So there's all these sorts of questions about what it'll look like, what things will work and not work.
I'll tell you what, because I know it's in Darwin, and I know there's quite a large Sri Lankan community over there. If you're going there, do get in touch and send us any pictures you've got or any video that you take. I'm sure that the Sri Lankan community over there, the diaspora, will be out in full force to go and support the boys. You might end up with an Aussie that you really want to back there as well. Talking about Zendan. So let like if you're involved in it, if you're going to have a look at it, then send us anything you've got if you can. If you don't, or if you can't use your phone or whatever. Firstly, how are you listening or watching this? And secondly, that's absolutely fine. I should also say, talking about listening, that you can, if you start watching this pod, but you can't watch all the way to the end. I should have said this right at the beginning, really. You can listen to this podcast as well. We are available on Spotify, Apple, and all the other places where podcasts are available. I do publish it probably an hour or two after the show goes on air, unless I forget.
And then our friend Bud, of course.
Of course. One of our most valued
Shout out, Bud. Yes.
Listeners. Dom, should we answer some of these questions and then wrap it up? Let's go with this one because it came in 4 times. Janea, what do you think about at number 4 position will play Danajaya Silva? I suspect they might move Kamindu up the order, just kind of pull everyone up. I don't know what your thoughts are on this.
That was my thought. DDS has come up the order before, but hasn't always been the most successful in coming up the order. I think he likes that 6th spot to be the kind of rescue danger man for Sri Lanka. But I think he certainly has the capability of playing 4 if they want to keep Kamindu at 5, saying that when Chandi retires, that spot's going to belong to Kamindu.
I need to look this up, but I've got a feeling. I need to look this up, so I could be wrong. I reckon DDS, if he has to bat overnight, always gets out in the first, within the first 3 or 4 overs the next day morning. It's at this moment, it's purely
it happens not infrequently.
Yeah, so I wonder if actually putting him up the order so he isn't stuck in an overnight position might not be the worst.
At the end of the day, and
yeah, I don't know. I could be all wrong about that though. Other questions.
Here's a good one.
We want to give more coach positions to our SL greats without always depending on foreign coaches and having our money going out. The only thing I will say, Savino, right, about that is, and I know I say this from a position of I live in the UK or US sometimes, and I don't spend a lot of time in Sri Lanka, is that fine, you get in, say you got in Dibith to do the batting coaching and Malinga to do the bowling coaching. They both live in Melbourne. So they're taking the money out anyway.
Yeah.
If the reasoning is financial, then I kind of don't think that comes into it. Is my thoughts. I could be wrong. I could be biased. Like that's kind of my thoughts on it anyway. I don't know. Maybe someone might say, yeah, but they spend a lot of money in Sri Lanka, and it kind of all, unlike. When they do bring foreign coaches in, there has been incidents in the past where the foreign coach has just spent months, if not in one instance, whole years in the Taj Samudra or the Cinnamon Grand, which is just spending a whole lot of money. SLC spending a lot of money on something where they could just get them a nice Airbnb or just rent them a place for a year, which I assume would be cheaper. I don't know. Maybe they got a really good rate. Maybe they know some guy at John Keel's.
Grand, yeah.
Yeah. Who knows? Is it time to give Ishita Vijay Sundara a chance to play? He makes every squad dub, but I don't think he's ever
he's never played
in anger, has he?
Yeah, and he's been a fantastic performer for the A team, for emerging teams, all those things. I think, unfortunately, when you have Kasan Rajatha and Vishwa Fernando, you don't lack for quality seamers. And you could argue that each of those guys gives you something different. Vishwa, obviously, with the left arm angle, and Kasan as a tall bowler who can swing it both ways. So I hope Isita Vijayasundara gets a chance at some point to play, but maybe not at home.
Maybe not at home. Let's finish on this one. So I think it echoes all our sentiments, Dom. We want Australia in the final. Women's Sri Lanka team to beat them for the first time. party emoji face. I think that's what we all want, isn't it, Dom? That's from Savina as well.
Yeah.
I think we all want that. If anyone's got any ideas of how to elevate the Charmy Army Muralian party on the Friday before the Australia game, I haven't even booked my tickets yet. I need to totally convince the wife that we need to do this and get it booked.
Oh, I thought you were saying, because you told me that you were thinking of going, but you hadn't told me that it had. I thought when you brought it up the second time it was because it was you had booked it and you were ready to go, ready to commit.
It's not booked just yet. I'm basically trying to work out how I could do it on Avios / Air Miles points. Okay. It's a bit of a for. I'll go into personal details about this, which is it's not just me who suffers from this. This is something that a lot of British Sri Lankans talk about when we meet up with each other. Is we all collect these Avios points from our cards, and I get them from using my wife has basically figured out a way for every penny we spend, somehow she will get some sort of Avios advantage from it. So we've got all these Avios points. But the problem British Sri Lankans have is British Airways none of their partners fly to Colombo, not directly, and Sri Lankan Airlines is not one of their partners. That's absolutely fine. So it means that I can't get kind of the super cheap flights or kind of cheap flights. So the way I was thinking about doing this was use my Avios points to get to Dubai, because that is I think there's 6 or 7 British Airways flights. There's loads of British Airways flights a day to Dubai. And so there's always seats available for them if you've got enough Avios points. And then from Dubai, getting a flight or from somewhere in the Emirates.
I was going to say, or in India, right? I'm assuming BA flies to India.
Oh yeah, that's true. I didn't even thought about that actually. Should have brought this up earlier, Dom. It's so the difficult bit is trying to. So when we go to New York, I'm always like trying to get an Avios flight to New York, but they're all booked up like years in advance.
Yeah,
I'm always like, I don't know why I bother collecting these points. It's an absolute pointless thing. It never yields anything that I want to go to. So we end up going to like the Tower of London or something because you can get free tickets with that. But my thought is try and get to Dubai or try and get to the Middle East and then get a flight to Colombo. I think the India flights might be difficult to get on Avios.
Because everybody's trying to get it.
Yeah. I was even at one point trying to figure out, could I fly to the Maldives and then get a quick flight from Male to Colombo. So I'm trying to make that happen. That's what I'm trying to do for kind of early October to get to the tournament and be part of the Charmy Army. Guys, have you got any thoughts and ideas of any sort of Murali and meetup we could do around that tournament? We'd love to be able to do it. I want to do meetups kind of all over the place, even if there doesn't have to be Murali people there, as in me or Dom or Estelle or Nick don't necessarily have to be there. If you guys want to do something wherever you are, I know there's people listening in Singapore. I know there's people who listen in all over the US and Australia. If you guys want to meet up somewhere, just get in the comments or message us, and we'll try and do what we can and facilitate it as much as possible. We're a community, we're a group. Let's try and come together as much as we can under the commonality of all being Sri Lanka fans. Dom, should we wrap it up there for today?
Let's do it.
Wicked. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll be back at the end of play, or about an hour or two after the end of play, during the test series, which starts on Wednesday in Sri Lanka. I've absolutely no idea what time or what time zone that
10 a.m.
starts.
10 a.m. IST, 12:30 a.m. East Coast, 5:30 a.m. your time, Mark.
Yeah. Stay with us, stick with us. We'll be back on Wednesday or Thursday, depending on where you are. See you later. Bye.